Welcome. So we are here to address the topic of living in challenging times, how to deal with sometimes extreme challenges, how to stay conscious when challenges arise. It's wonderful when things are going well in one's life. Perhaps you've fallen in love, or you're just getting married, or you got a promotion, you're doing well professionally, a child is born, happy moments, happy interludes, and it's to be enjoyed, of course, and appreciated. But the strange thing is that there's always something that comes in sooner or later that seems to want to sabotage the things that are going well in your life. Some people take it even personally, and they think, why is life treating me unfairly? Why do these things always happen to me? Why to me? Everybody else seems to be fine. Of course, that's a misperception. They may look fine if you look at their Instagram posts and what they post on Facebook. There, they all look fine and happy. But of course, as you may know, that's a facade. It's an artificially, mentally constructed image that people project into the world. And they may not realize that they are living ultimately a lie, that they are continuously projecting and living through a false, fictitious sense of self, through this mental image of who you are. That's me, my life, you say. What is my life? A narrative in your mind, a story you tell yourself, a story you tell others, something that you project. It's a role that you play unconsciously. It's a role that you've been conditioned to play. The roles vary from person to person, but almost everybody, unless they begin to awaken, become aware, awaken spiritually, almost everybody then plays, without knowing it, they play a role. It's the conditioning that they have experienced since childhood, conditioned by their immediate environment, conditioned by their cultural environment. So you become this entity. It's the script that you mistake for who you actually are, the conditioning of your mind. And so this entity, this mind-made sense of self that we could call the ego, is never happy for very long, and it tends to very much resent it when things go wrong in your life. In other words, when adversity that happens in your life, something that's wrong, something has gone wrong. The term adversity is related to adversary, and so it's almost as if you were facing an enemy in the form of a situation or an unpleasant person or an event that either is not happening but should be happening, or is happening but should not be happening. So you experience adversity on a small scale, and from time to time on a large scale adversity and small scale adversity. And that leads to suffering. The ego experiences it as unhappiness. So unhappiness arises in most people's lives almost continuously with, yes, brief interludes, and then again something comes up that causes you some form of unhappiness. There are basically, one could say, three types of adversity. One is adversity that arises in your personal life, in your immediate environment, to do with the people you know, the people you work with, at home, at work, wherever it may be, or some kind of illness that arises, or financial problems, relationship problems, and so on. So adversity arises in your personal life. Then there's another type of adversity, and this is something that we want to focus on here. Adversity that arises on a larger scale in the collective of which you are a part. That is adversity that does not just affect you, but adversity that affects large numbers of people in your city, in your country, or even in the entire world. So that could be whatever it may be. It could be an earthquake, it could be a hurricane, it could be financial collapse, it could be a pandemic, very relevant topic at the moment. So we have those personal and collective. Sometimes the collective adversities that arise is so huge that you forget about your personal problems, because they are suddenly faced with you become part of a huge collective problem, such as suddenly, let's say there's a war somewhere, and suddenly you may find that things that you've been worrying about recede into relative insignificance. And now there's a third type, but the third type is an element of all the others. The third type of adversity that is extremely common is adversity, suffering, you could say, that arises in your mind as a result of certain types of dysfunctional mind activity or thinking. And very often the unhappiness that my mind, if it is your mind, is creating at this moment is some type of fear. That's a very common form of suffering that people experience, fear. So if you become more conscious of that, so you can separate what it is that your mind is doing from what it is that's actually an immediate problem in your life, you can free yourself from a significant amount of unhappiness by recognizing considerable percentage of the unhappiness in your life does not arise from situations that you find yourself in, or that seems to be the case, but when you look more closely, you realize that actually the narrative that's arising in my mind right now is creating this emotion of unhappiness in me. You suddenly feel worry. What is worry? Worry is a certain type of mind activity. And usually it means you're projecting yourself into some future moment that is critical. Worry does not concern the present moment. When you have a problem or a challenge that arises in the present moment, you're not worrying about it, you're looking at it, and you may be required to take action, or you may look at the problem that arises in this moment and there's nothing you can do. And well, there it is. Worry usually implies future, projection into the future, which you cannot control. There's nothing you can do about something that you imagine happening in the future, and that makes it even more frustrating. If it were happening in the present moment, you could take action, or you could say, well, I'll just have to accept the way it is right now, that's how it is. But if it's something that your mind has created, there's nothing you can do about it. And so the mind projects itself and creates scenarios. What's going to happen to me, to my family? Is it going to affect me? Am I going to get ill? Am I going to not be able to work anymore? Am I going to die? And you imagine yourself these things happening to you. And then you experience fear. So it's important to realize that the fear is not created by the situation. If you look at it really closely, the fear is created by the mind activity, by unconscious mind activity, this type of thinking. And if it's worry, it creates an emotion that you experience in the body. This emotion is anxiety, fear. You can feel it in your stomach often. You can feel a contraction in your energy field. That kind of emotion is actually very harmful to the body. Even mainstream medicine now recognizes that people who frequently experience the emotion of fear, anxiety, stress, have a greatly reduced immune system. It affects the entire functioning of your body. It interferes with the otherwise harmonious functioning of your body. And there's a vast intelligence that underlies the functioning of the body. The body cannot tell the difference between the reality or just a mental creation. So the body reacts as if what you're imagining were reality. So it experiences fear. So fear is extremely unpleasant, and millions of people, majority of people, still experience it. And when things go wrong, adversity arises on a larger scale, either in your personal life or in the collective, then you experience even more fear than you would normally experience. The first step in becoming free of unnecessary suffering is to become aware of your mind, of your own mind. And then you will find that a huge chunk of suffering is produced by your mind rather than by the situation.